Frankie here. So today I wanted to share with you another one of my presentations that I did last year at several conventions, and I thought it would be a really good tutorial for either clients of ours who aren't lash technicians or lash technicians that are only classic trained or new to the industry and hear the term Russian volume and don't know what it is. So I'm going to go through this little presentation and talk to you about Russian volume, and we'll go a little bit technical as well. So what is Russian volume? Okay, it is the safe applications of multiple extensions, so they're little volume fans, as we've got on the right hand side here, and we add those to the natural lash to create extra volume and fluff. So if you look at the image on the left hand side, we're trying to achieve something like that. And the thickness of extension we use for Russian volume is 0.05, 0.06 and 0.07. Sometimes people use two 0.1s because it technically is a volume lash, but I personally don't. So I just class these ones as volume lashes. And if you are a client and don't know what I'm talking about, that is 0.05 of a millimetre. So these are very, very fine, lightweight extensions. They are so tiny. They're actually thinner than your natural lashes. So they're super, super, fantastic stuff for us to be able to create volume on you. And if you look below here, you'll see the different variations of 3D, 4D, 5D and 6D, etc. It just shows you how many extensions are in that fan that we're going to be placing onto that natural lash. Now there is a variety of volume lashing. I see so many comments on forums with people saying, I really don't like the look of Russian volume lashes. They're too caterpillary and thick. But they don't have to be, because they can be lightweight, as you've got here on the left. They can be medium weight in the middle, and they can be heavyweight on the far right. So we really do have a variety of techniques to use to create a different effect on our clients. Just depend on what they want and what their natural lashes provide us with. Because if they haven't got very many natural lashes, we can only create a light look. If they've got a ton of natural lashes, they're all heavy and strong, then we're going to be able to create a much, much more dramatic look on them. So we are governed by what the customer presents us with as a platform. Now, you may have heard talk about pre-made fans, and there is a massive debate over them pre-made fans in the industry, and please don't get into debate on this video about it. Some people are doing handmade fans, some people are doing pre-made fans. Guys, it's a completely different video altogether, which I will be doing in the future. But pre-made fans and handmade fans are very, very different, because a handmade fan that we've got on the left-hand side here is made, it's created, it's handmade by the therapist there, so they're very skilled to do it. It is the real deal. It's authentic Russian volume, which is handmade by the therapist there and then applied to the natural lash. You get such a beautiful seamless base with it because you can control it when you're dipping it in the adhesive to get it to come together. You'll tend to find that they are lighter weight because they're not pre-glued. Most pre-mades are preheated or pre-glued, and it can make them heavy. Well, they say that the preheated ones aren't, but definitely the pre-glued ones can be a little bit heavier. Because when we do a handmade fan, we just dip it once in the adhesive. And they say that you can get better retention because you can wrap or encase that fan onto the natural lash. Whereas with a pre-made, there's no skill. So when I say unskilled therapist, I don't mean that the therapist doesn't have any skill. So it's likely that she hasn't taken a volume course or just found it too difficult. So they're pre-made, so you don't need to make them. They're just already there. Fake volume. It is fake volume, okay? Because... okay, it's not fake volume because it still is volume, but it's fake handmade volume, or what we call authentic volume. And again, I don't want to go into this debate, but what really irritates technicians is if they're taking the time to hand make their fans and they're charging their price, and then you've got somebody down the road who isn't hand making their fans, is buying them pre-made, advertising them as like handmade authentic Russian volume, and then charging exactly the same price as the skilled therapist who's working her butt off to produce them. So I think that's where the upset comes, not the pre-made being available, but when you've got technicians working their butt off to actually create a nice fan. You've got somebody saying they're doing the same and they're not, because technically it's a little bit of deception if you look at it from that point of view. You can tend to get a thick T-bar base on them, as you can see in this image, because they are pre-glued or pre-bonded, and they can be, and I'm saying they can be, I'm not saying they are, but they can be heavier in weight because it's double the adhesive. And you can, I'm not saying you will, because we've had amazing results when we played with pre-made fans, you can sometimes get poor retention because you can't get the wrap compared to a handmade fan. So I'm just saying that, you know, like I said, this can. It's not like it will, but it can be in some situations. So that's the difference between handmade and pre-made volume fans. Now we want our fans to be perfect when we create them, so we are looking for perfect symmetry at the very tips. We want our volume lashes to be short in length, so we don't really lash over a 12mm with volume, because we want to keep it, you know, dark and dense, and we get that by keeping our lash length shorter. We want a nice seamless tight base, as you can see right at the bottom there, nice and seamless, ready to go onto that natural lash, and it's got minimal adhesive as well, so we keep it clean and lightweight. Now there are different types of fans that we use. We've got the deep V on the left and the long base on the right. So I always say the deep V looks like the letter V from the alphabet, and the long base is a bit more like the letter Y, or looks a little bit like a palm tree. Now both are actually technically correct, but you kind of just need to know when to use what type of fan, or whatever suits you really. So with the deep V, you're going to get a lot of fluff and coverage. So if you've got a client with quite sparse lashes, which a lot of my clients have because they're more mature, the deep V is always my fan of choice because it crosses over, so it adds that coverage that we need. Like I said, it suits sparse natural lashes because of that. But what you are going to get is less uniformity because they are crossing over. It's not going to give you that sort of upright strip lash look that you can sometimes get with Russian volume. Now if you opt for the long base, it's always going to give you a darker effect because you can actually see almost like the tree trunk bit of it looks so much darker than the deep V because there's no daylight shining through. So it actually can give you a bit of an eyeliner effect if you're doing it on a client with lots of natural lashes, which it says below here. And it's going to give you much more of like a uniformity strip lash look. So like I said, neither one is right or wrong. It's just what suits that client and also what suits your style of lash and what you like to look at. Now, correct use of adhesive. This is something a lot of people get wrong because they try to dip their volume fan like it's a classic lash, and if you do that, it doesn't work because they're very, very different techniques. Now, first of all, you have to have a volume adhesive, so it has to be non-wicking. So this means that the adhesive doesn't want to travel up the fan. So sometimes you can pick up a ball or a little bead, and it will start climbing up your lash. So non-wicking holes at the bottom. It needs to be very thin consistency because if it's too gloopy, it will just create a big mess at the bottom of the fan and also it won't cure. And that takes us on to fast curing. So it's got to be a super, super fast curing adhesive, which is an advanced adhesive, which means that advanced technicians need to be able to work with it. But it's got to be flexible enough so that you can place your fan onto the natural lash and get it to wrap and encase around the natural lash. So this is why we now sell volume adhesives, because it is a specific adhesive suited for that technique. Guys, you have to control your temperature and humidity to absolute perfection. So you will get to know what your adhesive likes to work at, and only if your temperature and humidity is at that will you be able to create nice fans that you can dip in the adhesive nicely and it holds, and then when you place it onto the natural lash, because the levels are correct, it cures correctly and allows you to work quickly. There's nothing worse when you're battling with your adhesive because your temperature and humidity is out, and it just means that your fans start falling apart when you try to put it on the natural lash. They like flop over or they close. It just is a nightmare. So this again is why we can't really do lashes mobile, because you can't control that. If you work in a big hall and you can't control the levels, it's a nightmare. You'll tend to find that the technicians like to have smaller rooms where they can really easily control that. So that's paramount. You need the correct amount as well, so less is actually more. It's not a classic lash technique. We need to hold that fan open, so the lower the adhesive is down the fan, the more open that fan can remain. And also, because you've got multiple extensions there, adhesive is surrounding each one of them, and then inside of the base of the fan is actually like a little chamber or like a little straw that will like suck the adhesive up. So you actually have more adhesive in there than you think. It just looks like there's nothing there, but trust me, there is. If you use too much, your fans will never cure and they'll keep closing on your lashes. So really, really less is more. Your lash will bond, trust me, because there is enough adhesive there. So let's talk about the attachment or the wrap. Now, when technicians attach a volume fan, they attempt to go for the wrap. Now, there's a lot of people out there that doesn't think this happens, but it does. You can get that natural lash right in the middle of that volume fan. And it is literally like we've got here in the picture. You can see the natural lash sitting right in the middle of the fan. It's like a bear hug, which is why we've got a bear here. And as you can see, this is going to give you great retention because every single extension has made contact with the natural lash. Whereas if you just had like a wedge of lashes stuck together and you just whacked it on top of the natural lash, you've got a much more minimal contact area. So if you have an adhesive or product breakdown, then you will find that your whole fan will come off easily. Whereas if you've got each extension encasing that natural lash, you're going to get much better retention by doing that. Now, these images show you what the wrap and the non-wrap look like. Now, on the left here, you can see how seamlessly the natural lash, which is red in colour, blends into that fan. That's what we want. We don't want it to look like we've got a natural lash and then we've got an extension. Because if you do, you're going to get the non-wrap, or what we call the T-bar on the right, where literally we've just got a wedge of lashes and they're just balancing on top of the natural lash. It doesn't look good, doesn't feel good for the client because it can, like, the sharp edges can catch on each other. And also it's not good for retention, because if you get a product breakdown on that lash in the middle, the whole thing's going to fall off. So this is why we go for the wrap. We don't always get it. You know, you have to have the right type of natural lash to get the wrap, but we attempt to do it. Now, I touched a minute ago on the wrap, and some people not believing it happens, but luckily I've got this amazing picture that I found on Instagram from AFTERCARE Lashes. Oh, she's an amazing technician. I love to follow her work. So go and check her out, because there are some awesome technicians out there, and it just gives you such inspiration when you can actually see their work. Now, as you can see in this picture, that natural lash is right in the middle of that little fan. How cool is that? So I've always kept this image so that I can show people when they don't believe me. So aftercare is exactly the same as classic extensions, however a little bit of extra care is needed because you've got to keep those fans open and fluffy. So you have a complete ban on eyeliner and mascara because this will destroy the set. It's like a little seabird. Little seabirds have feathers. If they get covered in oil or any gunky substance, it just destroys all of their feathers and then they die. And that's what happens to volume fans, okay? They're so soft and fluffy that they've got to be super, super clean to keep the fan open, because, and then anything that goes on that fan, like the little seabird, it just kills those volume fans. So you've got to be squeaky clean with them. I always say brush them regularly. A little seabird or an animal is always grooming himself to keep himself soft, clean and fluffy, and that's what we've got to do. So brush those lashes, brush, 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 sort of, I always say like 3-4 times a day when you go to the restroom. Infills are still going to be 2 to 4 weeks because of lash growth cycles. So if we as technicians are seeing customers any more than 3 weeks, there's so much growth there that we have to actually remove that lash, and then it becomes a full set. So this is why we have that policy, because the amount of work that it then takes, you know, after 3 weeks is too much for us to class it as an infill, that it, like I said, it technically becomes a full set. So if you're a customer and you wonder why we ask you to come back, then it's because of that reason. Now, styling tips when it comes to volume is, first of all, I like to favour the use of a D curl or even a CC curl to create shadow. Because the lashes almost bend backwards and try and curl over themselves, it creates that natural shadow which you're not going to get with a flatter curl. So it's a good choice. And also, when you think, if people are asking for volume, they want drama. So they want a little bit more lift, they want a little bit more of a dramatic curl. But just make sure that you don't, well, basically make sure that you know about eye styling, because if you put, you know, even though I'm saying use a strong curl, that curl might not suit that client if she's got big round eyes or something. So you still have to know your stuff, peeps, but that, you know, that is a good curl, starting to use stronger curls on volume. Make sure you use shorter lengths overall to create a thicker and fuller effect. If you go out to Europe, 10mm is the longest they use, because on a lot of clients, I'm not saying everyone, but most of it, because they know that to get thicker, fuller looking lashes, it's got to be shorter. So for me, I try and go with that. Otherwise, I'm not lashing over a 12mm because some of my clients do want a little bit of drama, and that's not a problem, but 12 tends to be the longest I'm lashing with volume. If you use shorter lengths intermittently throughout the lash line, like the base of it, like on the lower layers or the top layers, it doesn't matter, you're going to get more like a fringed camellia, sort of staggered fluffy eyeliner effect going on. So that's a great little tip. Now, eye styling is a completely different subject. I have a fantastic online course for this at eyelashexcellence.com. So if you want to learn how to eye style, it's solely developed towards that. But if you are struggling with an eye style, I always say if they've got a good brow, follow the shape of the brow. I know there are trainers out there that don't agree with that, but for me, I've always tried it if I was unsure and it's worked. So that's what I'm going to recommend. Always, 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 always keep your inner and outer corner zones shorter. So I would say maybe the first 5 or 6 extensions on the inner and outer corners match the natural lash length. If their lash length is ridiculously long, you can go shorter. It's absolutely fine to lash shorter. You do not want to be extending these inner and outer corners. They are so fragile. You will kill them. So don't put too much weight on them. Also, they're what I call ugly areas. They're the areas everyone sees and sees that imperfection in there, which could be hidden in the middle of the set. So you want to draw no attention to those whatsoever. So make sure that if you are doing volume, 2 and 3D only in those areas, super snug to the lash line so they don't flop around, and make sure that your fans are perfect because everybody is going to look at those ones. So little tips for you there. So this is my current guide of what you can use on natural lashes, okay? Give it 3 months. This might well have changed because there's always new programs coming out, new developments in the lash industry. And also some of us make mistakes. Some of us calculate it slightly wrong. I know sometimes there is no error for mistakes, but if we do, I think we're probably underestimating how much volume we can use. Guys, I'm not going to read through this, but if you want to, you can take a screenshot of this or take a photograph of it on your phone and it will help assist you later on down the line. But we're going to move on because we don't want to look at those numbers for too long. So I hope that helped you kind of understand what Russian volume is. Guys, there is so much more to it, okay? That's just a little bit so that you're not bored for hours whilst I talk about it. We go into some serious technical stuff about Russian volume. We haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg with what we've got there. I don't like to blow my own trumpet, but I have developed my courses, and I do hope that my courses are some of the most technically complex out there, and you know, when it comes to the theory behind Russian volume. So if you do want to learn the technique, or maybe you've trained in it and you're not confident, don't forget that we do offer classes here in the UK. I do travel around the world as well, and I do have online courses, and my content in my online courses is exactly the same as you get when you come and see me in person, and you still get the same aftercare feedback. You'll get assessed by case studies, all of that. So it's great because you've got lifetime access to that course. It never expires. You would get free updates whenever we update the course. It naturally updates on your system, and you can rewatch those videos as many times as you want. So you know, online training is great for that. And if you are a customer or a client looking to get Russian volume, that's a little bit of an insight into it. If you are a client and you are worried about getting them and you want to know something, just drop me a message, okay? Because I can always assist you with finding good technicians and things like that if you are concerned about that. Again, hope you enjoyed that one. Hope that gives you an understanding, and thanks ever so much for watching. And don't forget to follow me on my social media as well, at Frankie Widows. That's on Instagram. Facebook, Frankie Widows Eyelash Excellence, and obviously you're following me on YouTube. Check out the other videos as well, and bye bye.